The most common criticism of the design of a professional wrestling belt is, it looks like a toy.
God knows why they changed it to that piece of crap that they got.
If you're anything like him, you're probably yearning for the old-time swagger and opulence of a prize-fighting belt and don't want this ultimate goal of something you're passionate about to reflect on you as immature. Now, I remember when winning a big gold used to mean a little something. But we weren't meant to have animated lights and music. I was showing a good friend who loves wrestling but knows little about WWE some of my favorite matches, and she said something that everyone has been thinking for 16 years. The Divas belt kind of reminds me of that line that Nerf guns had, for her. I fell to my knees. She was of course referencing Nerf Rebel, which you will remember if you grew up in the 2010s as a pretty lousy attempt at gendered marketing. Gendered marketing is a form of market segmentation, which is basically taking a customer's belief that they belong to a group and targeting or exploiting that self-identification for money. Gender is a classic way to focus advertising efforts. The shape, the texture, the colors, the verbiage, it all defines the gender of a brand. But because for a while there's been so many men named John and not very many women in corporate positions, it's been pretty damn clumsy. Girl, buy some pens. Girl, you're a goldfish princess. Girl, soften your stools. I meant those all to be read as Rachel Hollis book titles. However, gays will call anything mother. This goldfish diva, I like her. Since the inception, and especially once we got closer to the end of the Divas era, people saw the championship as, girl, you're a butterfly champion. So much to the point that someone wrote into ringsideconfessions.tumblr.com and said, one thing the Divas division could benefit from is the Divas Championship getting a redesign so that it no longer looks like the darkest abiding nightmare of a sales associate at Claire's. The butterfly belt being gendered marketing is fact, and its inception was a direct response to trends in the market that is the most potent for gender roles, children and their toy aisles. But first let's back up a little bit. Why is it that pink is the color of femininity? Before our modern day, kids were Victorian ghosts, and they wore long white garments to scare you when they haunted you after they died. But to parade effort and access, rich families began introducing pastels to not be like the poors. For the next 30 to 40 years, there was an intense debate on which color was assigned to which gender. Originally, pink was seen as a strong color and therefore it was associated with boys. However, as white-collar work and suits and ties became more common in the 30s, men wore darker colors and trends in women's wear shifted to contrast this. Post-war advertisers decided that red was romantic, and so manufacturers assigned pink to women. And much like Queen Victoria's white wedding dress inspiring that institution, the First Lady Mamie Eisenhower started wearing pale pink dresses, as well as icons of feminine glamour like Marilyn Monroe solidified pink as a color for women and girls. Marilyn inspired women, who inspired women, and by the 1980s there was no doubt about which color represented which gender. So back to toys. It wasn't always like this. Children in early stages of development have always been significantly less gendered, but by the time that autonomy from one's parents begins to develop, we've already been inundated by the rules of gender through marketing. The specific craze of toy companies reaching out to their untapped female market really amped up around the late 2000s and into the early 2010s. Companies realized that there was a major chunk of money missing out by not marketing to girls. And to differentiate between the two market segments, ads became more bombastic in their gender stereotypes.
Give her a bottle.
Uh-oh, I made it stinky.
And then she leaves an uh-oh in her diaper.
Baby, I love you, Mommy.
How's your baby?
Shh, she's sleeping.
Insect army of blue-filled crawlers to smash and splat. Grind them up with the creepy bug grinder. And make them again.
Toys go smash and splash.
And the divide between the toy aisle deepened even further. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, the WWE was hard hit by the effects of the brutal programming of the Attitude Era and beyond. Outcry from parents over dangerous moves being replicated by their children, and rampant prescription and steroid abuse led to an unspeakable act, meaning a TV-14 product was now becoming PG. To understand how that impacted the women, here's Beth Phoenix speaking to Chris Van Vliet.
You know, they rebranded us with a pink title. We were really being marketed toward young women and I think they were kind of starting to get away from the real sexualization, the male 18 to 25 or 30 audience that we were really driving toward, and then gently stepping toward PG, where even the costuming was being reflected. Like they were changing what they wanted us to wear because we're trying to fit within a mold for a PG product for kids.
With its tail between its legs because of all the sexual humiliation, the Divas were rebranded towards building up demographics of young girls. And girls' toys are not gold, they're pink. So the Women's Championship was retired, also so that they could remove it as the oldest in the company, and it was all butterfly here on out. Just as we see in the advertisements, the intention was not to teach young women that they could have cage matches. And so the physical wrestling was extremely simplified during this era, which meant when it was on point and that classic formula worked, it was some of the best ever. But because of the male force behind the scenes, long-form athleticism was taken over by whatever this may be. Sometimes I'll see pictures like this, where Kelly is holding a lollipop, and I feel like I'm going crazy. Now, despite its architect's shoddy craftsmanship, there's two facts about gendered market segmentation that we need to remember. First of all, it definitely works if you're going from low/zero. The LEGO Friends exceeded Kirkby's expectations, and the Divas division and its subsequent ventures built up a young female demo for WWE. The second thing we see with gendered marketing is that while women are willing to buy products marketed at men, usually because of something called the pink tax, where everything for her is more expensive, men are not. Just look at this study from Michigan State. In 2017, a greater share of adults thought that it was okay for girls to do boys' things than for boys to do girl things. And this immensely held back the Divas from making inroads with the core male audience, especially with young boys who had been constantly fed sexist ideals, and also the grown-ass insecure men who were fed the same thing, but they should have known by then. Male wrestling fans did not want to be perceived as feminine or queer. It's surely no coincidence that the first all-women's main event for WrestleMania was won by someone with the nickname The Man. But that's why the Divas belt looks like a toy, because it was meant to be a toy, and it was meant to make the women who wore it into Barbies. Thank God men's wrestling never had to worry about that.